Have you ever caught him looking at you when he thinks you're not noticing? That slight change in his voice when he speaks only to you. The unconscious doesn't lie. While his words might be cautious, his soul has already made its choice, and it's you. What if I told you that the man who sometimes confuses you with his mixed signals is actually more in love than even he realizes? Carl Jung discovered that our deepest emotions bypass our conscious mind entirely, revealing themselves through subtle behaviors we can't control. When a man's soul recognizes yours, his body betrays what his lips haven't yet confessed. Most women mistake silence for indifference, when in reality, it might be the exact opposite. The most authentic form of love doesn't announce itself with grand gestures. It transforms his entire world in ways neither of you fully recognize. Until now, here are the unmistakable signs his soul has chosen you, even if his mind hasn't caught up yet. That man who perhaps confuses you with his silences, with his distant attitude, or with his sudden closeness, might be much more in love with you than he himself imagines. Because love doesn't always enter through logic or clear words. Sometimes it filters through dreams, through the way he looks at you when he doesn't notice, through how his behavior changes with you, and only with you. Jung said that what is not made conscious manifests in life as destiny, and that also applies to love. If he hasn't yet become conscious of what he feels, his soul is already acting for him. So how can you know if he's truly in love? What signals does his unconscious give you? His heart, his deepest emotions, even if he doesn't say it openly. This won't be a superficial analysis. I won't talk to you about text messages or romantic cliches. We are going to delve into what Jung called the symbols of the soul, into how a man expresses himself when there is something inside him that vibrates every time he is near, even if he himself doesn't fully understand it. And before continuing, I want you to pay attention to each sign, because many times the mistake we make is to expect declarations, promises, or spectacular gestures, and we let the most valuable thing pass by, the way someone transforms their inner world when you are in it. Jung taught that true love is not chosen, not programmed. It appears as an inevitable force that disarms our barriers and connects us with the most essential part of our being. So, open your intuition, your sensitivity, and observe the following. If that man does even one of these things, if you have seen him react in any of these ways, it's because he is deeply moved by you and probably much more in love than his rational mind is ready to admit. I'm going to show you these signs one by one, from the most subtle to the most revealing. It's not just about knowing if he loves you, but about seeing how someone's soul responds to real love. When a man is deeply touched by a feminine presence that transforms him, even if he doesn't know how to explain it with words, his behavior begins to change in ways that even he cannot control. And the first big sign is in how his attention is modified. It's not obvious attention, the kind that seeks to impress or call for attention back. It's something more subtle, more authentic. He begins to be aware of details that for others would go unnoticed. How you really feel, even though you say I'm fine. How you changed your hairstyle, even though you didn't mention it. Or if something in your voice sounds different. This type of attention doesn't come from a superficial interest, but from a connection that is born deep within. Jung believed that true emotions are projected so that we can understand them, and that makes this type of man react from his interior, not from a strategy. He doesn't need to see you every day to remember you. You may notice that in moments you didn't expect, he mentions you, asks you something he left pending, or simply appears for no apparent reason. He doesn't do it out of habit, but because his unconscious leads him to you. He's processing something that he himself hasn't yet defined, but that drags him along. This isn't obsession or dependence, it's emotional resonance. Your energy has touched something in him, and that something begins to speak without need for words. Another powerful sign is how he begins to change when he's with you. There are men who act the same with everyone, but when a man is truly in love, even if he doesn't know it consciously, his attitude with you is different. He may appear more vulnerable, more open, or even more clumsy, because true love doesn't make someone appear perfect, but it disarms them. and that makes them more human, more real. If you notice that he allows himself to lower his guard only with you, if you notice that his silences with you are not uncomfortable but deep, you are facing something that goes beyond passing interest. But there's more. Jung maintained that what the soul loves, it protects. And this man may begin to worry about you in ways that have no logical explanation. He may want to make sure that you're okay, that you don't get cold, that you don't walk alone at night, that you eat on time. It's not about control or making himself important. It's about something inside him that has started to feel responsible for your well-being. As if his balance also depended on yours. And when that happens, when a man begins to care for you with that silent devotion, without asking for anything in return, without expecting applause, it's because deep within his being, he has already made you part of his inner world. Even if he doesn't say it, even if he doesn't understand it, even if he doesn't even want to admit it, his soul is already united with yours at a level that goes beyond the rational. So, if you're seeing these signs, if each word resonates with you, don't take it lightly. Don't be confused by his lack of outer clarity. What is happening inside him is much bigger than it seems. Stay with me because what comes next will show you even deeper signs, those that only a real connection can manifest. There are moments when a man doesn't need to say absolutely anything for his energy to give him away. It's as if his presence speaks for him. Maybe he hasn't said that he loves you. Maybe he hasn't made big promises or made plans with you, but there's something in the way he observes you, in how the rhythm of his breathing changes when you get close, in how he stays silent by your side without the need to fill the space. And that silence is not an absence of words, it's total presence. It's his soul connecting with yours without interference. Because when a man is more in love with you than he dares to admit, his body says it all. Look at how he reacts when someone else talks about you. If you're in a group and someone praises you, observe his gaze. If someone criticizes you, notice how his expression changes. Love doesn't need to be conscious to come out and defend what it values. His instinct activates even if his mind is still confused. Jung affirmed that the unconscious has its own paths, and many times we are guided by emotions that we haven't yet managed to name. If a man jumps, even with a look, when someone mentions your name, it's because something inside him has already decided that you matter more than he thought. Another clear sign is in his effort. When someone feels something real for you, they make an effort, even in small things. It doesn't have to be something spectacular. It can be in how he listens to you, in how he remembers things you said a long time ago, in how he adapts his time, even in how he apologizes when he feels he wasn't up to par. That silent effort reveals more than 1,000 words. Because someone who feels nothing doesn't move, but someone who loves, even if they don't understand it, makes space. Not out of obligation, not to impress you, but because his inner world is already rearranging itself to include you. And here comes something that very few people notice. When a man is deeply touched by your presence, he begins to change even when you're not there. His routine is altered. His thoughts become more erratic. He may seem distracted, more reflective, more restless. It's as if something has been activated in him, and he doesn't know why. But you are there, present in his mind, in his emotions, in what before was automatic and now is not. Jung spoke of the power that internal figures have to transform the individual, even without physical contact, and you, without seeking it, have become a figure that inhabits his interior. Even if he doesn't say it, even if he denies it, you are already there. That's why you shouldn't be carried away by the surface. Many men keep quiet about what they feel, not because of a lack of emotion, but because it's difficult for them to translate the language of the soul into the language of logic. And that's where you, if you're attentive, can see beyond. You can perceive what he himself hasn't yet discovered, that his heart has already made a decision. Stay because there are more signs that reveal this silent but powerful love. And when you understand them all, you'll see the complete picture, one that perhaps will change the way you understand love forever. There is a transformation that occurs in the heart of a man in love that is rarely noticed at first. It's slow, almost invisible, but deeply powerful. That transformation manifests when he begins to set aside certain attitudes that were previously part of his daily life. Perhaps before he avoided commitments, perhaps he always maintained an emotional distance from people, or maybe he simply lived in a kind of comfortable individualism, but since you've been around, there's something that's been shaking him from within. Just thinking about himself is no longer enough. He begins to open a mental and emotional space that he wasn't willing to yield before, and he doesn't do it as a sacrifice. He does it almost without realizing it, as if his soul were adapting to a new reality that calls him from the depths. Notice if he has started to share with you parts of his life that he didn't show to anyone before. I'm not talking about banal details, but intimate fragments of his history, his fears, his mistakes, his most hidden dreams. When a man is connected with you at that level, he begins to show his humanity without filters, not because he wants you to see him as perfect, but because he begins to trust in a way that he had never experienced. At that moment, it's no longer a conquest, no longer a game of seduction, it's surrender. And that surrender, although it may seem small, is the greatest proof that something inside him has changed. Jung claimed that the soul needs a mirror to know itself, and you, with your presence, become that mirror. He begins to see you, and at the same time, he begins to see himself in a different way. There's another detail that often goes unnoticed. How does he react to your emotions? Not everyone knows how to handle the emotional intensity of another, but when a man is truly involved with you, he begins to synchronize emotionally without knowing it. He feels your joy and smiles with you, but he also becomes restless when he perceives your sadness. Even if he doesn't have the right words, his energy changes when you change. He may not say, "Are you okay?" every time, but you'll notice it in how he looks at you, in how he lowers his voice, in how he approaches without knowing what to do but wanting to do something. That desire to accompany you in your emotion, even without knowing how, is one of the most honest gestures of unconscious love. And perhaps the most revealing of all is what happens when you're not there. Observe how he acts when you're not around. If he mentions you in spontaneous conversations, if he saves things to tell you later, if something happens to him and you are the first person who comes to his mind. In those moments, when there is no physical presence to motivate him, if you are still present in his inner world, in his thoughts, in his emotions, then there is no doubt he is more in love than he believes, because what persists in absence is stronger than what is said in presence. And that is not coincidence, that is the soul speaking. All of this is not about guessing what someone feels. It's about learning to read with the heart, because many times love doesn't arrive with words or certainties. It arrives with signals that the soul launches when it begins to recognize another soul. Stay close, because what follows will reveal to you how love acts when it can no longer be contained. There is a stage in which a man, even without knowing it, begins to need your presence, not as a habit but as a form of balance. He doesn't express it with romantic phrases or planned declarations, but there's something in his energy that changes every time you're far away. He may not tell you directly, but you'll notice it in his impatience when there's no news from you, in the way he appears just when you are about to forget him, in how any excuse seems valid as long as it brings him close to you again, even if just for an instant. It's not obsession. It's not emotional dependence. It's genuine connection, the kind that is born from a point so deep that even he can't explain why he thinks about you so much. And that, according to Jung, makes all the sense in the world, because the unconscious is not limited by logic or time. When a true emotion takes root there, it begins to take shape in thoughts, in impulses, in decisions. And one of the strongest ways in which that manifests is in how that man begins to consider your opinion, even in things that don't directly involve you. Maybe he begins to tell you his life plans and asks you what you think, not to look good, but because he genuinely cares about knowing if it fits with you. He doesn't do it with the intention of impressing you, but because, silently, you are becoming a guiding figure in his emotional life. He may even begin to talk to you about his doubts, about his moments of insecurity. And that's not because he wants to see you as a therapist or because he doesn't know how to handle his emotions. It's because his soul has detected in you a safe presence, someone with whom he can show himself as he is, without armor, without strategies. And when a man reaches that point of emotional openness with you, there are no barriers anymore, because love is not built on certainties, but on the possibility of being vulnerable without fear. That trust that he places in you, even without being fully conscious of it, is one of the purest expressions of deep love. But what confirms it all is how he begins to imagine his life by your side, even without you proposing it. You notice it when he mentions the future, and, without realizing it, you are already included. He might say something like, "Someday I'd like to go to such a place." And within that vision, you are present. He doesn't say it directly, but he implies it. And those small phrases, those images that are born spontaneously, are open doors to his unconscious. In his mind, you already form part of the path, not as a temporary guest, but as a stable part of his ideal world. And you don't need to pressure him or demand clarity, because the soul, when it loves, demonstrates it in the simplest gestures. And if he is doing this, if his energy, his acts, and his attention are inclining towards you in an increasingly natural way, then what exists is real, even if he doesn't yet understand it, even if he doesn't yet have the courage to accept it out loud, because when the soul has chosen, the rest is just a matter of time. And in that time, you can see with the eyes of the soul what the mind still doesn't dare to say. Stay with me, because there's still more to discover. When a man begins to look at you as if you were part of something he doesn't want to lose, something begins to change in his way of relating to you. And that change is not superficial. It's not about him being more affectionate or seeking you out more often. It's about how his soul begins to reorganize his world around your existence. Because when a feeling is true, the other person stops being an addition and becomes an essential part of the whole. You'll see it in how he begins to give you priority, even when he doesn't say it. Maybe he has a complicated day. Maybe there are many things demanding his attention, but even so, he makes himself present, not because he has the obligation, but because he simply doesn't want to stop being there. Because being with you, even in silence, gives him peace. And peace is one of the most underestimated emotions in love, but also one of the most important. It's not just about feeling butterflies or experiencing excitement. True love, the kind that gestates in the unconscious, the kind that Jung studied and recognized as a transformative force, also manifests in that calm that is felt when being with someone who doesn't need to be different to be loved. When he feels at peace with you, when he notices that he can lower his guard, that he can be imperfect and still be accepted, then he begins to see you as a home, not a physical place, but an emotional refuge. And when that happens, he begins to do something that many don't notice immediately. He begins to align with you without you asking him to. Maybe he begins to enjoy the things that you enjoy. He becomes interested in your passions, your ideas, what makes you vibrate. It's not that he loses his individuality, it's that he discovers that there is beauty in sharing what before was only his. This is not a coincidence. According to Jung, when two souls begin to resonate, the internal boundaries soften, and it's at that point where true intimacy is born. Not just desire, not just attraction, but that sensation of silent belonging that needs no explanation. Also, pay attention to how he defends you in your absence. Maybe you don't hear it, maybe you don't see it, but in small conversations, in moments where you aren't even present, he takes a position in your favor. Not because he wants to gain something from it, but because inside, he feels that protecting you is part of protecting what he has begun to love. Love doesn't always shout. Sometimes it simply acts. Sometimes it speaks in gestures that no one else sees. And that type of love, the kind that defends even in silence, is the most powerful. So, if he does this, if he changes his routine without realizing it, if he takes care of you in the invisible, if he thinks of you before making important decisions, don't ignore it. You are facing an emotional truth that even he himself hasn't finished understanding. And there is where the purest part of love is born, in the part of us that hasn't yet been conditioned by fear, by logic, or by wounds. Stay here, because we are about to reach the deepest signs of a love that can no longer hide itself. And when we reach that point where all the signs intertwine, when you look back and realize that that man has changed without noticing it, that his acts, his silences, his most everyday gestures speak more clearly than any word, that's where you understand the most important thing, that true love doesn't always present itself in a scandalous form, doesn't always arrive with fireworks or perfect declarations. Sometimes it arrives in the form of constant presence, of silent care, of tenderness that doesn't need witnesses. And when a man is more in love with you than he imagines, his soul has already made a decision that his mind is just beginning to understand. Jung taught us that the unconscious doesn't lie, that in the deepest part of us lives a truth that manifests itself through symbols, through emotions, through acts that we don't always understand, but that are real. And if you are seeing these signs, if you have felt this connection, if something inside you tells you that what happens between you is not casual, listen to it. Trust your intuition, because many times what we call doubt is simply the mind trying to understand what the soul already knows. In the final analysis, what we seek is not the perfect declaration of love, but the authentic resonance of a soul that has quietly chosen ours. The signs are written not in grand proclamations, but in the subtle alchemy of changed priorities, in the gravity that pulls him back to your orbit, even when logic offers no explanation. Jung understood that the most profound connections transcend our conscious understanding. They emerge from the depths where our authentic selves reside, untouched by fear or strategic calculation. When a man rearranges his inner world to make you an essential part of it, when his energy shifts in your presence and absence alike, when he offers his vulnerability without armor, this is the love that precedes words, the recognition that happens at the level of being. Trust the wisdom of your intuition. It perceives what rational thought often misses. For in this dance between conscious and unconscious, between what is said and what is felt, lies the most transformative truth. Sometimes the heart arrives at its destination long before the mind realizes it has traveled. And if you've witnessed these silent testimonies in someone's actions, rest assured his soul has already whispered what his lips have yet to confess. He is much more in love with you than he imagines. We'll see each other in the next video. Yeah.